Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're making some nautical themed shelves. Well, we've made quite a few shelves over our time here on the show. Some over-the-door shelves, we've made some floating shelves, we've made some heavy-duty floating shelves. We have kind of shelved out, but I'm in the need for some more for my office, and they are to hold some nautical themed items, and I want the shelves to be nautical themed. So that's what we're going to do today. There, I think, are 4 in total. They're all custom sizes, they're all custom builds, and it all starts with some very easily accessible material with some big box store 3/4 inch pine. Well, the reason I've chosen pine is number one, it's cheap. Number two, it is lightweight, so it doesn't put a lot of pressure on the wall that you install it on. Number three, it's a very forgiving wood. It's great for beginners. And number four, here on the show, it is to make this project accessible to those of you who may not have access to species like, say, walnut or cherry or that sort of thing. So we're going to use something that is accessible pretty much to everybody. So what we're going to do first is we need to cut the main surfaces of our shelves. Now I have 4 shelves I need to make. At this point, I think I'm only going to make 3 of them because the other one is a little too custom and I need to think a little more about it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these over to the table saw. I am going to rip them to their final widths and as well cross-cut them over there to their final length. And once I get those 3 done, I'll see you over here at the bench and we're going to work on the brackets for our shelves. Okay, and there we go. We've got 2 shelves that are 16 inches long by 8 inches wide, and I've got 1 shelf that is actually 5.5 inches wide by 42 inches long. But for the purpose of this video, I'm not going to be demonstrating on the 42-inch piece. It's just easier to film on a 16-inch. But all the same procedures that I use here on these smaller, shorter shelves will be applied to this longer one. And I'll show you at the end what that one looks like. So at this point now, when we have our shelves cut, we need to make our brackets. So what I like to do is, I don't want my brackets right to the edge for starters, and I don't want them right to the front edge of our shelf. So I need to come back a little bit. So we've got 8 inches of shelf here across from the wall to the front. So I want our brackets to be 6 inches, just 2 inches back. I like to give them at least 3/4 of the width of the shelf to give it extra support. So what I need here is, for each shelf, I need 2 brackets, 1 on each side. And those brackets are going to be squares of 6 inches by 6 inches. So we're just going to cut that over at the table saw. Now for the shelf brackets, I'm going for simplicity in design. So the very first thing I'm going to do is on one corner of each one of our brackets, I'm going to come in 1/16 of an inch from each edge. And what that's going to do is that's going to give me a pivot point for my compass. We're going to place our compass point on that point, extend our compass right to the edge of our board, and then we're going to draw our arch here. We're going to do this on each one of our 4 brackets. Now guys, I'm going to cut these at the scroll saw. Depending on how the cutting is going, I may cut them and then sand up to the line to perfect them. If you don't have a scroll saw, you can do this at the band saw. Same thing, cut just outside the line if you want, and then sand up to the line to get that perfect arch. Whatever you do, however you do it, just do it. And we're going to get all 4 of these brackets for our 16-inch shelves done, and I'll show you where to go with this next. Okay, and the last piece that I've made for our shelves is this piece right here. Guys, it's a mounting board. I don't like using these brackets, especially in pine, to hold the shelf. I prefer a solid piece right across the back that is fastened to both the shelf surface and to the support brackets. And we actually screw through this to mount it to the wall. Now for this here, this one here is cut to be 12.5 inches. And that, when placed here in the middle against our side brackets, allows each one of our brackets to be recessed in by 1 inch from the edge of the shelf. So at this point now, I need to do a little bit of routing. So on this front-facing bottom corner here of this backboard, we're going to place a 1/4 inch round over on both of our edges of our shelf brackets. On our curved surfaces only, we're going to place a 1/4 inch round over, and all the way around on both sides of our actual shelf, we're going to place a 1/4 inch round over. That will all be done over at the router table. Guys, I can't caution you enough here to make sure that you're using a starter pin, especially for the curved pieces of the side brackets. The rest of it, you can use a fence, which is even safer than the starter pin. But for those strange curved surfaces, please make sure you're using your starter pin to get the routing done. And with those components all routed, the only thing left to do now is to drill some holes. Now guys, we don't need a video of me drilling holes, but I will tell you the holes that I want. And what I want is in the sides of each bracket, I want a hole to be able to secure this back brace to the side brackets. I need a couple of mounting holes here in our back brace to be able to mount and screw our shelf to the wall. I want a couple of screws down through the shelf to mount into our back brace here. And I also want a couple of screws to be able to go into our side brackets to be able to secure it to our shelf as well. Now guys, if you don't want to mar the top surface of your shelf, you can use dowels to mount these side brackets. If you wish, you can just glue them in place with some pin nails. For me, I prefer the screws, and I know that these are going to be higher up and the top surface of these shelves are not going to be visible, as well as the pieces that will be displayed on here I also know are going to cover up those holes, so I'm not too concerned. But if you are and you want to secure these side brackets to your top without the screws, there are plenty of other methods of joinery that you can use to do that. So I'm going to get all of those holes drilled. Then we're going to give everything here a good sanding. And then it's just a matter of gluing it and screwing it together. Now, guys, you want to be very, very careful here of squeeze out. I have said this many times when making these shelves before. You want to be careful of the squeeze out because these are being made to match other shelves in the room to keep the same kind of design feature going. So these are going to be stained with a dark walnut stain, and any squeeze out is going to prevent that stain from penetrating and giving a good finish. So let's get this all done, drilled, glued, screwed, squeeze up, cleaned out, sanded, and I'll show you what we've got at the end of all that. Okay, and that is 3 shelves assembled. I didn't do the 4th one because I want to change the design a bit. I'll think about that later. But for now, there's not much more that we can do with these other than wait for the glue to dry, and then we're going to apply a walnut stain to all 3 of them. Now guys, I can already hear some of you saying, what part of this is nautical? Well, for the nautical part, we are going to head into the computer, head into the laser engraver, and I'll show you what I have in mind. Well, we're not going to do a full tutorial here. What I am going to do is I will give you a rough idea of what it is I've done to make these shelf bracket accents. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this square that I've just drawn to 150 by 150 millimeters, and then I will lock it in to keep its proportions the same. So there we go. At this point now, I want to add the radius, and what we're doing here essentially is I am duplicating our shelf bracket. So I have our radius set to 150 millimeters, and we're just going to click on one corner. And as simple as that, we have our shelf bracket. Now guys, I have an image that I have downloaded off the internet. I'll just bring it up here in our light burn. And there we go, the ship's wheel. And what I want to do first off is we're going to trace this image. We don't want it as an actual photo. We want it as a line drawing. So I've traced it, and we can just click OK to give us our tracing. And there it is. So what I want to do at this point is I want to enlarge it so that it fits in our shelf bracket. So we're just going to blow it up until we're happy with the proportions of it, that it fits. Okay, and that looks pretty good. So we're going to highlight everything here. And what we're going to do is over here up at the top in Tools, we're going to use the Boolean Assistant. And depending on which one you click on, you can see what the assistant will do to it. You can just hover over it and it'll show you the results. And the one in this case that we want is subtract A from B. So we'll click OK, and there we go. There is our pattern. Now, we need to change some of these areas, because some of these we want as a cut and some we want as an engraving. So we need to ungroup these. Right now, this is all one image. So if you click on Arrange, you can ungroup them, and now they are all individual. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this section, we'll change it to our pink layer. We'll take this section, change it to our pink layer, and this outer section, and change it to our pink layer. And what that is going to do is everything here in red, once we set it to do so, will cut out. Everything else will be a line engraving. So this is our pattern. So we just want to export it now, and this will export it as an SVG. So you'll title it and then just save it. You can save it to your desktop or wherever you want to. Once you're done with all that, we're going to open up the We Create Make It app, because honestly, I'm going to be using the Vision Pro for this, and I would rather use their proprietary software than trying to muck around with using Lightburn at this point. So we're going to import. We can go up to File and Import, and on our desktop will be our SVG. There it is, of the wheel that we just made, with our red lines being the cuts and the blue lines being our engravings. But we need to assign those. So if we click over here on the blue layer, we can see that that is already a line engraving. So that's what we want. But we need to make sure that our red layer are cuts. And at this point, they're not. They're line engravings. So we will click to cut, and it will automatically change our parameters according to the material that we have chosen up here at 3mm wood or 3mm basswood. And guys, that is it. We are now ready to go. You can adjust the size of this at this point to whatever you want. You can shrink it manually like this, or you can come up here to the scale and choose the size as per the bracket that you want to make these for. So for each one of our brackets, I need to perform 2 of these engravings. So I'm going to get these all done, and when I get those finished, I'll see you back out in the shop at the bench. With our shelves stained, I just want to point something out to you. And remember I said about the squeeze out? Well, look right here. See those white lines right in the corner? That is a little bit of squeeze out that was not taken care of properly, and the stain just did not take. That's okay though, because I know that with my design, that is going to be covered, as is this screw that holds that back mounting plate. So all that inside work with the laser, well, this is what I came up with. And it's a partial semicircle, as you saw, of a ship's wheel. And what we're going to do is this is going to get mounted on each one of our brackets, just like that, on each side. So we're going to get these glued into place, but the problem is this bracket here on the inside, or this mounting support. So in order to overcome that, all we're going to do is I'm going to lay this piece on here, just like this, and we're going to take a square right across our bracket here, and we'll draw a line. And then we're going to place it on the back side here, right where it aligns. We're going to align that, clamp it in place, and then same thing. We're going to set a square or a straight edge up against our bracket, and we're going to mark a line here. Now I'm going to take this over to the scroll saw and I'm going to cut along those two lines, and that should give us the perfect cutout that we need to glue this bracket on the inside here. So let me get that cut and I'll show you what it looks like. And it only takes a second to cut that out, and we can line this up and get that glued into place. And you can see there we've got our ship's wheel now on the inside as well. So let's get all of these accents glued onto our shelves. All right, when you get those brackets mounted, you end up with something that looks like this. Now the ship's wheels there on the inside and the outside of the brackets. All that's really left to do here now, guys, is to apply the finish. Now for me, I'm going to use an HVLP sprayer with a satin varnish. I would not suggest, just personal preference, I would not suggest using a brush to do this. The only reason being is that all of these little cutouts here and the ridges of the ship's wheels, in my experience, it always seems to create runs. It creates a place to drain the extra finish out of your brush and sit it down in those little crevices, and then of course that runs out, and it just in my opinion, it really doesn't give a nice finish. And since I have discovered HVLP and started using that here in the shop, those kind of things are avoided. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put the finish on these. Hopefully I'm going to get them mounted where they go after the finish is dry, and then I will show you what they look like mounted up on the wall. And there you have it. Nautical based shelves, or nautical themed shelves. Guys, this project is dead simple and dead accessible. There are so many alternative methods that you could use to make these. I have access to diode lasers, so I used what I had access to. But if you don't have that access, there are always alternate ways to do something. The scroll saw is the one that just screams out, hey, use me for this project. And I was initially going to use the scroll saw because I haven't done much on it lately. But then I really wanted the engravings to give the kind of accents of those brackets on the inside of each one of them. So I went with the laser route. However, there just recently on the show, we did a wood burning tutorial. And if you took advantage of that and tried wood burning, why could you not wood burn the ship's wheels with your wood burner? Maybe do some shading. Give it a little bit of a 3D look with the wood burner after cutting it out on the scroll saw. There is so many options. Guys, if you don't want that flat shape, you could even get dowels and make the actual, I don't know what they're called, but the handles of the ship wheels from dowels, and glue them in place to make almost like an Intarsia 3D ship's wheel on those brackets. It's whatever suits you. Now, the shelves are pretty generic. In fact, you probably recognize them as being very similar, if not identical, to our over-the-door shelves that we did here on the show. The big difference between the two is the placement of the mounting back brace and the placement of the brackets. On the over-the-door shelves, the brackets were above the shelf, and the actual mounting bar itself was above on the back end of the bracket to support it from falling forward. On these shelves, the brackets are below with the mounting holes on that back brace at the top of those brackets. And that back brace, of course, holds it to the wall while the shelf brackets gives it the support to keep it from tilting forward with any kind of weight on it. So a very similar design to our over-the-door shelves that we did earlier on the program. But they're generic. They're very generic. So if you don't want, say, a nautical theme, don't put the ship's wheel. What about a spring theme? What about butterflies? What about if you're into superheroes? How about Captain America's shield, say, on the edges of the brackets? How about a superhero figure engraved on the side with the accent glued on? How about your initials? How about monograms, say your first initial on one side and your last initial on the other? There are so many different options that you could utilize to make these shelves custom for your needs. For me, I wanted nautical themes because of what I was putting on them. But you can basically make them for whatever you want. The whole point of this show is not to copy what I did. The whole point of the show is to take what I've shown you today, twist it, turn it, manipulate it, and mold it, and make it your own. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in this week. If you found any part of today's show interesting, entertaining, informative, fun, whatever, you know what? Why not like and subscribe to the channel? Guys, we have an amazing audience base here, and I sincerely hope that you're going to consider becoming a part of that. I want to thank you so much for tuning in this week, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the content. I hope you were able to pull something positive out of today's show, maybe a little tip here and there. I hope you were able to learn something. I hope you're going to give this a try yourself. But more importantly, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another woodworking video.